So today we're going to continue on in our series called Men of God. And today we're going to talk about our responsibility to others. And I regularly have conversations with my boys about caring for their mom and their sister. And very often when I leave the house, I'll grab one or both of the boys. I'll pull them aside and I'll say, hey, take care of our girls while I'm gone. This is your job. Take care of our girls while I'm gone. Why do I do that? Do I do that because Abby and Eden are incapable of caring for themselves? Of course not. If you've ever met my wife, you know how ridiculous that statement is. Okay? That's not the reason. And Eden is her mini-me. She is copy and paste. They are incredible. Abby, in so many ways, is every bit my equal, and in a lot of ways, she's a lot nicer and better than me at lots of things, okay? She's highly intelligent, she's strong and creative and hilarious, and she could survive just fine without me. We choose to be together, but very often she'll say to me, I don't know where I'd be without you, to which I almost always reply, probably rich and famous, let's be honest, okay? And my goal, though, as a man, is to have her exhale when I enter the room, and not like, ugh, not that kind of exhale. Just a, whew. My goal is to have her feel more secure and more safe and more protected when I come into the room. Because I want her to thrive. And I want her to flourish. I love the person that she is. And I love the person she's becoming. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that there ain't nothing that's going to get in the way of that. And I want my boys to understand that this is part of your role as men. And one of the things that Abby says to me regularly that I appreciate so much, she'll say, hey, thank you for setting the tone for our family. Thank you for setting the tone for our family. And I appreciate it both as a compliment and also as a reminder that it's my job to set the tone. And as a matter of fact, I do set the tone, either on purpose or on accident. Because if Dad brings chaos and strife into the room with him, guess what's in the room? It goes crazy. But also, the room changes when I walk in with a sense of calm confidence too. See, it might be chaotic outside, might be all kinds of craziness happening in the world out there is full of apathy and cruelty and hatred and all these things. Let's say, but within these walls, it's going to be different. Within these walls, it's going to be different. Because God has charged me with being the keeper of this garden, and I take that job very seriously. Like we talked about last week, I say, listen, I know Adam didn't do the job. And I know that I'm not going to do it perfectly all the time. I'm going to give it my best. With everything that I have, I accept this responsibility. I understand the mission, and I'm going to do my best to execute it. There's this little kid. His name is Bridger. You may have heard of him, but he totally gets this. He was playing outside in Wyoming with his 4-year-old sister, and a German Shepherd got loose and went after his sister, and Bridger stepped in and saved her life. I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning before I throw his picture up on the screen, but I want to show you what I'm talking about. Here's what happened to Bridger, because he ended up in the hospital and he needed 90 stitches. 90 stitches. Now, why did he do that? The dog wasn't going after him. The dog was going after his little sister. And after he got out of the hospital, everybody wanted to know. It became a national story. Everybody wanted to know, why would you do that? And he told his dad, here's what he said, if anyone has to die, it's me, because I'm the big brother. He was 6 years old. He got it. And I understand that none of what I just said is popular to say, but I don't care because every word of it's true. Because every word of it's true. Men, I want to ask you a question. How come we're out there working so hard? Why are we out there working so hard? Why are we driven to make money, to drive a nice car, to lift heavy stuff, to do all the things that we do? What are we chasing after? I'm going to give it to you in one word. Significance. Significance. We want to know that what we do matters. We want to know that all the effort and all the time and all the sweat and blood and all the things that we pour into, it's not wasted. We want other people to think we matter. At least some of us do. Some of us don't care about that. But when it boils all the way down, we want to know that we matter, that we're making a difference. But here's the problem. We often miss what's truly significant while we're out chasing significance, don't we? We often miss what's actually significant while we're out chasing significance. Let me give you an example. We may have missed the point when we worked 90 hours this last week so our wife and kids, whom we never talked to this week, could have nice things, could drive nice cars, go to nice schools, have nice clothes, all the things, all the tutors, all the stuff. We might have missed the point. And we also need to understand, gentlemen, that there's a difference between significance and name recognition. Like we know that, right? Just because you know their name doesn't mean they're doing something important. Just because they know your name doesn't mean that you're doing something significant. We don't want to be known for doing something that doesn't matter. Meanwhile, the women and children in our lives are wondering, where are we at? And listen, you don't have to be married for this to be true either. You don't have to be married for this to be true. But we aren't just responsible for ourselves. And we're going to talk about our responsibilities to ourselves next week, but I wanted to start with an outward focus. And I want to start here. Because we know, gentlemen, that our responsibilities run deeper than just paying the bills, right? It runs deeper than that. And if masculinity is about taking responsibility, how do we live up to our responsibilities toward others? And I know this is going to shock you, especially coming from a preacher, but Jesus was real good at it. He was really good at this. And I want to show you from Scripture, from the life of Jesus, some things that will help illustrate what our roles and responsibilities are as men, especially to the women and children in our lives. Now, I want to remind you, as we start this, that Jesus wasn't married. So it doesn't matter if you're married or if you're not right now or if you never have been. Everything that I'm about to say is going to apply to you. And ladies, if you're in the room and you're not married, this is the kind of person, this is the kind of man you should be looking for. First thing I want to show you is this. Jesus respects women. And how he went about doing this was shocking in his day. In fact, it's still shocking in a lot of very traditional cultures. If you have your Bible, I want you to open it up to Luke chapter 10, because I don't want you to take my word for this. Luke chapter 10, we're going to begin in verse 38. And if you're following along in the YouVersion Bible app, you can hit the event tab and look for Swiss Cove in there. But Luke chapter 10, beginning in verse 38, says this. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things, but few are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, if you've been around church for a while, you may have heard this story before, and maybe never really given a whole lot of thought to the implications of Jesus' attitude toward Mary, but I want you to pay attention to this. Mary joins them. She's sitting in the circle with who? Who's them? She's sitting in the circle with a bunch of men at the feet of Jesus, and Jesus doesn't send her away, even though her sister's like, she's supposed to be in here. And that might seem inconsequential to you, but this would have been strange, looked down on, scandalous, in fact, to a lot of people in this time. Mary's doing something radical. And Jesus says, no, I'm not going to send her to her place because her place is right here. She needs to be with me. Jesus respects women, but he also actively listens to them. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but there is a difference between listening and hearing. We know this, right? And Jesus, he didn't just listen, but he heard. Another famous story about Jesus comes from John chapter 4. And it involves a conversation with the woman at the well. And she has what we're going to call, for the sake of discussion right now, an embarrassing reputation. Okay, she's out there in the middle of the day for all kinds of reasons. And Jesus has this conversation with her. He talks to her, but more importantly than that, he listens to and he hears her. And she's taken by surprise because she did not expect to have a conversation with him, because she's a woman. And in this culture, the only reason that a man would talk to a woman in public is not to have a conversation. Okay? And she's not only a woman, she's a stigmatized woman, and she's a Samaritan on top of all of that. And the Jews hated Samaritans. So add all that up, and she fully expects to be ignored by Jesus, but that's not what he does. He doesn't ignore her. He has a conversation with her, and he's very patient with her. And because of the conversation that they have that day, a whole city gets to meet Jesus. Jesus respects women. He listens to them. He defends them as well. You remember when Jesus was teaching in the temple courts at dawn, and the religious leaders, they bring this woman in because they want to trap him. And she's been caught in adultery, and we also may notice that the man ain't with her because they don't actually care about her. They're trying to trap Jesus, and they're willing to use her if that's what's necessary to get to him. But Jesus defends her. They said, hey, she's been caught in the act of adultery. That means we should kill her, right? We get to throw stones at her. What do you say about that? And this is a trap, because you see, the Romans had told the Jews, you're not allowed to execute people. So they're telling Jesus, should we obey God or should we listen to Caesar? What do you think about it? And Jesus, he doesn't run them off with a supernatural show of power or muscle. He could have done that, all the bravado. Instead, he has a conversation with them. He essentially tells them, you know what? You're right. That is what the law says. So go ahead and pick up your rocks. People that get to go first, though, are the people who've never sinned before. Go ahead. And they thought about it. And then they start dropping stones, and people start leaving. And when they have all left, he turns to the woman, and we read this in John chapter 8. Verses 10 and 11, this is Jesus speaking. He said, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No one, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go now and leave your life of sin. So once again, we see Jesus giving us a brilliant picture of what masculinity looks like when it's done right. And we talked about last week, where Adam failed, is he's letting Eve face an enemy. He's standing right there and saying nothing. And here we see Jesus rise to this woman's defense and send her enemies scurrying away. Now, he doesn't excuse her behavior. He says, go now and leave your life of sin. He holds her accountable, but he doesn't hold her up for public disgrace either. And I want you to think about this. This is what our culture loves to do. We specialize in uncovering shame, don't we? Particularly that of women, because we think it's fun. We got to have something to talk about at work. Did you see what she did? Did you see who she slept with? Did you see all this? We uncover shame for our own delight. But listen to me. Uncovering shame diminishes people, and it exposes people, and it dehumanizes people. And Jesus was not about to engage in that. Instead, he stood up to that kind of culture, and he covered her shame. And then he said, go now and leave your life of sin. So Jesus respects women. He listens to them. He protects them. And he doesn't reject little kids either, does he? We see it over and over in the Gospels. The little kids are trying to come to Jesus, and the apostles are like, no, he doesn't have time for that nonsense. And Jesus said, no. Let the little children come to me. And he holds them up as models of faith and trust. He loves and he protects little ones. And gentlemen, that is what Jesus is calling you to do as well. So let me sum this up for you. Your responsibilities, particularly to the women and children in your life, are these. You need to respect, protect, listen to, and love them. Respect, protect, listen to, and love the women and children in your life. And listen to me, you can't do that passively. That's not something you can kind of just hope happens. You're going to have to take an active role in making that happen in your life. Listen, a passive man is useless to the people around him, and that's not even actually strong enough. Let me say it this way. A passive man is actually a threat to the women and children in his life. You know why? Because a passive man is not respecting or protecting or listening to or loving them. A passive man leaves them open to attack from the outside and very, very often, eventually, becomes a threat to them on the inside. You know why? Because here's what happens, gentlemen, and you know this is true. We let it go, and 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 the whole time it's building up inside because it's irritating. And eventually, what happens is we lash out at the people in our house or the people that we're close to. A passive man eventually becomes a threat to the people in his life. And then when you make life about you, it's going to turn into a mess. It's going to turn into a mess. And that's not to say that you don't have needs or that you're not going to get anything out of this bargain, because, listen, that's kind of the mystery of all of this, is when we give our lives away, or when we don't make our lives about us, we find out that we end up having a much, much more significant life. And you can choose to give your life to whatever you want to. You can. You can choose to give your life to work if you want. You can choose to chase money and things and girls if that's what you want to do. But before you make that decision, I want you to go home and I want you to read the book of Ecclesiastes today. And then make the decision about where you're going to give your life away. But you can't ignore what's significant if you want to be significant. Does that make sense? You can't ignore what is significant if you want to be significant. And the only thing that lasts is people. The only thing that lasts. Everyone in this place and online and who will ever hear this, everybody you know has a soul. And they will spend eternity in one of two places. They will be in heaven or they will be in hell. So men, you want to lead a life of significance? Lead them to Jesus. You want to have a significant life? Lead them to Jesus. Guide them to hear and believe the gospel. To repent of the sin in their lives. To confess Jesus is Lord. To be baptized by immersion. To live their lives for Jesus. But it's your job to set the tone, and I want to remind you that you can't lead people places you haven't been. You can't lead them where you're not right now. So if you need to talk to somebody about giving your life to Jesus today, I would love to chat with you. I'll be down here in just a minute. But this invitation is not just for the men in the room. This is an invitation for every one of you. If you need to talk to somebody about how to give your life to Jesus today, please come talk to me. I'll be down here in a minute. And if you don't want to come down front, you can talk to somebody that's got a name tag on. Like we said a little bit ago, that means they're a staff member or one of our elders. We'd love to walk with you through this. And if you're with us on the stream, you can email us at hello@swisscovechristian.com. Pray that you will. But men, it's your job to set the tone. It's your job. And if you want to talk about how to do that, I'd love to chat with you about that today too before you leave. But your responsibilities to other people include respecting, protecting, loving, and listening to them. Let me give you just a couple of quick examples about what this looks like and what it doesn't before we wrap it up today. A man who's doing these things will not live with a woman he's not married to. Will not. Here's why. When you do that, you are valuing keeping your options open more than you're valuing her. And you heard what I said, ladies, yes? When he does that, he is valuing keeping his options open more than he values you. You're taking her without fully giving yourself. You're also acting in a way that will be both her and your undoing. Your body is proclaiming oneness, but the rest of you ain't. The rest of you isn't. You're acting out a lie. Sex in the context of commitment of marriage, body, soul, and mind. It's creative, it's secure, it's beautiful, it's made by God, it's wonderful, 10 out of 10, would recommend. Okay, but sex in any other context is not. It's the opposite. It's destructive for her. It's destructive to you. And when you do this, you are not respecting, protecting, or loving her. Also, listen, the people in your neighborhood, your school, your workplace, they should be safer because you're there. Even if they don't know it, that doesn't mean you got to go around and flaunt it. It just means it should be true. They should be safer because you are there. For the women and children who know you, whether that's your sister, your mother, your neighbor, your coworkers, your kids, whoever it is, it should be unthinkable that you would harm them. It should never even cross their minds for 1 second that you would harm them. You set the tone for your house. You set the tone. And when you're consistently gentle and respectful with your wife, guess what's going to happen in your house? It's going to tend, your house is going to lean toward being respectful and gentle. On the other hand, if you're passive and you just let it happen, you're disengaged because you're off doing whatever, I promise you, a measure of chaos is going to fill that house. I've done it both ways. It's not fun. A measure of chaos will fill your home because human nature is going to take over, just like the weeds in that garden that you just let it go. It'll choke it out. So be gentle, be respectful, be a source of security. And listen to me, men, your wife or future wife wants to respect you. She does. She wants to respect you. She wants to admire you, but she won't be able to if you are the source of insecurity in her home. It'll make it very, very difficult. And you can take your kid to 1,000 lessons and offer them the finest tutor and the nicest things, but that's not the objective of being a dad, is it? That's not the objective as a parent, because your main task isn't to impart skills and to make your kids marketable to the corporate world. That's not the end goal. You're here to shape character as securely and fully as you can before they leave your home. Your goal is to help them fall in love with Jesus and love like he does. Listen, if your kid becomes a doctor but doesn't know who you are, you might have missed the boat. If your kid becomes a doctor or whatever profession and has never seen you love your family, love your neighbors, love your community like Jesus, you might have missed the point. And here's the scary part. You don't get to do it over. You don't get to do it over. You got them right now. You got them right now. If you got kids in the house, they are your garden to keep, to protect, to cultivate, to guard. And we need some men who don't forget what their role is. Who don't forget what their role is. And every bit of this is hard. Don't hear me stand up and say, oh, this is easy. Here's all you got to do. Every bit of this is hard. And it's challenging. And it's beautiful. And it's sweet. And it's frustrating. And it's life-giving. And it's wonderful. And it's only for a time. So do not miss it. Don't miss it. Our culture is going to tell you that you're not being enough, that you're not doing enough, that you aren't enough when you fully lean into being husband and dad. And they're going to try to make you think that you're not doing what's significant. You need to go do something significant and make a name for yourself. They'll say you need a more impressive looking garden and you need it right now. That's a lie. Our culture is lying to you. The most significant thing you can do with your life is to give it to Jesus and to teach the other people that you're responsible for to give their lives to Jesus too. That's the most significant thing that you can do because that will echo for eternity. The most significant thing you can do is give your life to Jesus and guide those around you to do the same. And you give your life away in service of the ones that God has entrusted to you. You set the tone, gentlemen, and they are watching. So the question is, what you going to do next? Let's pray.